If your greatest weapon only works when nobody asks hard questions, then it was never strength. It was wishful thinking. The words were barely out of Ambassador Nathan Walker's mouth before the chamber erupted with laughter. Hundreds of delegates from every corner of known space leaned back in their polished seats, some shaking their heads, others exchanging amused glances as if Earth had just delivered the punchline to an old joke. High Councilor Vorak stood at the center of the massive council floor beneath a ceiling that shimmered with artificial starlight, his ceremonial robes flowing behind him as holographic displays filled the air with glowing blue schematics. "Observe," Vorak declared, his voice calm and deliberate. "The final evolution of defensive technology. A shield that renders primitive kinetic warfare obsolete." A sleek alien cruiser appeared above the chamber in brilliant holographic detail. Moments later, recordings of Earth's railguns fired dense tungsten projectiles toward the vessel. One after another, each round vanished against the radiant barrier surrounding the ship. No explosion, no damage, no visible effect, just harmless flashes that faded into silence. The applause began before the demonstration even ended. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vorak continued with a satisfied smile, "today marks the end of humanity's obsession with throwing pieces of metal across space. Civilization has finally moved beyond barbaric engineering." Another wave of laughter swept through the room. A reptilian delegate leaned toward his neighbor. "They still believe rocks can win wars." His companion chuckled. "Apparently gravity is their greatest scientist." Nathan didn't react. He quietly reached into the inside pocket of his gray suit, removed a small leather notebook, uncapped an ordinary black pen, and wrote a single sentence. His chief of staff, Rebecca Collins, leaned closer without taking her eyes off the chamber. "You knew they'd do this." Nathan nodded once. "Of course. Should we respond?" "Not yet." Rebecca studied him for a moment. After 15 years working beside Nathan, she had learned something most diplomats never understood. Whenever he looked the calmest, he was usually the most dangerous man in the room. Across the chamber, Vorak slowly descended the circular platform until he stood only a few yards from the human delegation. His expression carried the confidence of someone who had never questioned his own conclusions. "Ambassador Walker," he said loudly enough for every microphone to capture his voice, "surely Earth has no objection to retiring weapons that history has already declared obsolete." Cameras immediately turned toward Nathan. Every network across the galaxy waited for humanity's answer. Rebecca could almost hear her own heartbeat. Nathan closed his notebook, straightened his cuffs, and looked directly at Vorak with the same polite expression he might have used while discussing a delayed flight. "I do have one question, Counselor." Vorak smiled. "Please." Nathan glanced once at the enormous projection of the glowing shield before returning his eyes to Vorak. "Has anyone here ever tested that shield against an enemy who actually wanted to understand how it worked?" The chamber fell strangely quiet. It lasted only a heartbeat before scattered laughter returned, louder than before. Several delegates rolled their eyes. Others whispered that humans always hid behind philosophy whenever technology failed them. Vorak gave a dismissive wave of his hand. "Understanding is unnecessary when perfection has already been achieved." Nathan offered a faint smile, almost sympathetic. "History has buried a lot of things that people once called perfect." Vorak's expression tightened for the first time that morning. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but Rebecca caught it immediately. Nathan had planted something far more dangerous than doubt. He had planted curiosity, and curiosity had a way of surviving long after arrogance disappeared. The laughter followed Nathan Walker all the way to the exit of the council chamber, echoing through the polished corridors as delegates replayed his question with amused disbelief. None of them noticed that he never looked back. Rebecca Collins caught up beside him, matching his steady pace. "You rattled him." Nathan pressed the elevator call button without answering. The doors slid open with a quiet chime, and both stepped inside. Only after the doors closed did he finally speak. "No." I reminded him that physics does not vote. Rebecca folded her arms. "You think somebody in that room understood what you meant?" Nathan gave a slight shrug. "One or two probably did. The dangerous ones always do." Thousands of miles away on Earth, inside a heavily secured research complex carved beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Olivia Hayes stared at a wall of data flowing across 6 oversized monitors. Outside, The afternoon sun baked the empty landscape, but deep underground the laboratory remained cool and silent except for the steady hum of servers. Olivia barely noticed either. Her attention stayed fixed on a microscopic fracture pattern rotating in 3 dimensions. The lines were almost invisible. Most scientists would have dismissed them as simulation noise. She never had. A notification appeared on her secure tablet. Priority message. From Ambassador Nathan Walker. She opened it immediately. The message contained only 7 words. They took the bait. Begin full verification sequence. Olivia smiled for the first time that day. Finally. Across the room, systems engineer Marcus Bennett looked up from a diagnostics console. Good news. Exactly the news I expected. Marcus walked over carrying a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Council demonstration? Olivia nodded. They showed off the new shield. And, exactly like the prototypes predicted. Marcus frowned. If the demonstrations were real, those shields stopped every kinetic impact. Olivia reached over and enlarged one section of the rotating simulation. Hair-thin fractures appeared beneath the glowing energy surface. That is what everyone sees. She highlighted another layer hidden beneath the first. This is what nobody is looking for. Marcus leaned closer. Stress harmonics? Olivia nodded again. They built the strongest wall in the galaxy. She paused before quietly adding. They forgot walls vibrate. Marcus stared at the display for several seconds before slowly setting down his coffee. You think they actually released this technology? Not think. Olivia tapped the secure message from Nathan. I know. Before Marcus could respond, alarms flashed across the laboratory. Not emergency alarms. Incoming encrypted priority traffic. Every monitor instantly switched from research data to live council feeds. Nathan Walker appeared on one screen, while High Councilor Vorak addressed reporters outside the assembly hall. Effective immediately, Vorak announced confidently, the Galactic Council will host an official multinational demonstration in 72 hours. Every recognized civilization may submit its most advanced kinetic weapon against our shield network. Once the results are verified, all kinetic weapons will be permanently classified as obsolete military technology. Reporters applauded the announcement. Several delegates smiled confidently behind him. Marcus looked back at Olivia. That is not a demonstration. No, she answered quietly. It is a public execution. He frowned. Of humanity? Olivia slowly shook her head as new calculations raced across every monitor in the room. That is what they believe. She reached for her phone and dialed a classified military frequency. The call connected after a single ring. This is Dr. Hayes. Tell Admiral Samuel Brooks the council just scheduled the test. There was a brief pause before the operator answered. What level of response should I classify? Olivia never took her eyes off the growing fracture map glowing across the screen. Tell the Admiral it is time to wake the prototype. The announcement spread across the galaxy faster than any fleet ever could. News channels interrupted regular programming. Financial markets paused. Military analysts filled every broadcast with confident predictions that humanity would finally abandon what they called outdated engineering. Inside the Terran embassy, Rebecca Collins muted another news report and looked across the conference table. Every network is calling this the end of kinetic warfare. Nathan Walker calmly stirred his coffee. They are free to celebrate early. Rebecca sighed. You really do not enjoy making things easy for reporters. Nathan smiled faintly. Truth usually takes longer than headlines. A secure display lit up at the far end of the room. Admiral Samuel Brooks appeared from Earth, wearing the simple dark uniform that had become familiar to everyone on the call. He did not waste time on greetings. The invitation just arrived. The Council wants every member civilization to bring its strongest weapon to the proving grounds. Rebecca glanced at the document. Public attendance, every major government, every military observer, every news organization. Brooks folded his hands. They want the entire galaxy to watch humanity fail. Nathan looked almost amused. Good. Witnesses matter. Brooks studied him for a moment. Dr. Hayes completed the verification. Nathan nodded once. I expected she would. She also requested authorization to activate the prototype. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Already. Brooks answered before Nathan could speak. She believes waiting introduces unnecessary risk. Silence settled over the room. Nathan finally leaned back in his chair. Approved. but only under protocol gray. Brooks gave a short nod. Understood. The screen faded to black. Hours later, thousands of miles beneath the Nevada desert, Olivia Hayes walked through a vault protected by thick steel doors and multiple security checkpoints. Engineers quietly stepped aside as she approached a long rectangular container resting beneath bright white lights. Marcus Bennett stood beside it holding a digital clipboard. Everyone signed the final clearance. Olivia scanned the room. Any objections? Marcus gave a small smile. Only the usual ones. They still think this is impossible. Olivia placed her hand against the cool metal surface of the container. Impossible usually means somebody stopped asking questions too soon. A security officer entered the vault carrying another encrypted tablet. Dr. Hayes, the council has one additional condition. Olivia accepted the device and read the message without changing expression. Marcus noticed anyway. Something changed. She handed him the screen. The council required every submitted weapon to undergo a complete technical inspection before testing. No sealed systems. No classified components. No exceptions. Marcus looked up. They want to know exactly what we are bringing. No. Olivia quietly locked the tablet. They want to make sure we cannot surprise them. Can they? She looked toward the sealed container. Not with the weapon. Marcus frowned. Then what worries you? Olivia answered without hesitation. The scientists. Back on the council capital, Cash and Vorak stood inside a private observation lounge overlooking the massive proving arena where the demonstration would take place in less than 3 days. Beside him stood Chief Science Director Lyris Anvek, one of the few researchers respected across every major civilization. Lyris watched the growing list of registered participants scroll across a transparent display before stopping on Earth's submission. Interesting, Lyris murmured. Vorak glanced over. What is it? Their paperwork. What about it? Lyris zoomed in on the engineering declaration. It is almost empty. Vorak laughed quietly. Perhaps they are embarrassed. Lyris continued reading in silence. Finally, the scientist spoke again. Or perhaps they intentionally told us almost nothing. Vorak dismissed the thought with a wave of his hand. There is nothing left for them to hide. Lyris did not answer immediately. Instead, the scientist stared at Nathan Walker's digital signature at the bottom of the submission form and felt a strange feeling that no equation could explain. For the first time since the new SHIELD project had begun, someone inside the council wondered whether humanity had agreed to the demonstration because they expected to lose, or because they had been waiting for someone else to schedule it. Admiral Samuel Brooks arrived at Test Range 7 before sunrise, carrying nothing but a worn notebook and a pair of reading glasses. The facility looked ordinary from above, just another stretch of empty Nevada desert surrounded by miles of dry earth and distant mountains. Beneath the surface, however, hundreds of engineers were preparing something that had remained locked away for almost 12 years. Brooks stepped into the control room, where Olivia Hayes and Marcus Bennett were already watching telemetry scroll across a wall of displays. Status, Brooks asked. Olivia answered without looking away from the data. Prototype is stable. Guidance package synchronized. Harmonic controller is responding inside acceptable limits. Brooks nodded. Then let us see if the math still works outside a simulation. A heavy blast door slowly opened, revealing a long underground test tunnel stretching nearly 2 miles. At the far end stood a shield generator built from recovered alien technology purchased decades earlier through legal scientific exchange. It was not identical to the Council's newest design, but its energy architecture was close enough to answer the only question that mattered. Marcus activated the countdown. Target shield online in 10 seconds. Blue light spread across the distant test chamber, forming a smooth sphere around the generator. Brooks folded his arms. Fire a conventional round first. A rail launcher echoed through the tunnel with a deep metallic crack. The tungsten slug crossed the distance in a fraction of a second before disappearing into the glowing barrier. The shield flickered once and remained intact. Marcus looked over his shoulder. Exactly as expected. Brooks simply replied, again. A second conventional projectile reached the target. The result did not change. The barrier absorbed everything without visible damage. Olivia stepped toward another launch system positioned beside the first. It looked almost identical except for one small module mounted near the chamber. Brooks noticed her hesitation. Still nervous? Olivia smiled faintly. Always. The day an engineer stops being nervous is the day everyone else should start worrying. She placed her hand on the firing control. Loading Prototype 1. Marcus looked at the diagnostics. Velocity unchanged. Exactly the same. Mass. Exactly the same. Brooks glanced between them. So the only difference is what happens during flight. Olivia nodded. Nothing else. The launcher discharged with the same familiar sound. The projectile crossed the tunnel. For an instant, nothing happened. The shield glowed as brightly as before. Marcus exhaled. Did we just prove them right? Before anyone answered, tiny indicators began flashing across every monitor. Olivia leaned closer. There. Brooks narrowed his eyes. The shield still looked perfect to the naked eye, but hidden beneath the energy surface, microscopic resonance waves rippled outward in delicate patterns that no conventional sensor would ever notice during a public demonstration. Marcus stared at the growing graph. It is not breaking through. Olivia shook her head. It is teaching the shield how to break itself. Brooks quietly smiled. Run the second pass. Another prototype launched. Again the barrier held. Again the chamber remained silent. Then warning lights appeared around the shield generator as internal stabilization systems compensated for tiny oscillations that should not have existed. Marcus whispered, "The frequencies are stacking." Olivia answered, "Exactly as predicted." Suddenly, an alert interrupted the celebration. A secure communications officer hurried into the control room, carrying a tablet. "Admiral, we just intercepted a council directive." Brooks accepted the report. His expression became unreadable after the first sentence. Olivia noticed immediately. What happened? Brooks slowly lowered the screen. The council has moved the demonstration forward by 24 hours. Marcus looked stunned. Why would they do that? Brooks handed the tablet to Olivia. Attached to the directive was another message from Chief Science Director Lyris Anbeck requesting additional observation equipment and expanded diagnostic monitoring around every shield array. Olivia read it twice before looking toward the test tunnel where the prototype launcher sat quietly beneath the bright lights. Someone finally started asking the right questions. Brooks gave only one order. Seal the facility. From this moment on, nobody leaves until we are ready for the demonstration. The proving grounds were unlike anything most civilizations had ever seen. Suspended above the surface of an artificial moon, the massive circular testing arena stretched nearly 3 miles across, surrounded by observation platforms packed with military officers, scientists, journalists, and government leaders from hundreds of worlds. Every seat was filled long before the first weapon arrived. News drones drifted silently through the air, broadcasting every angle to billions of viewers across known space. Nathan Walker stood at the human observation station beside Rebecca Collins, both dressed as if they were attending an ordinary diplomatic meeting rather than the most anticipated military demonstration in generations. Rebecca glanced around the arena. Everyone expects us to fail. Nathan adjusted the cuff of his jacket. Expectation is not evidence. Across the platform, High Councilor Vorak greeted foreign delegations with effortless confidence. Every conversation ended the same way. Friendly smiles, quiet laughter, casual remarks about how today's event would finally convince humanity to embrace modern technology. Only one person seemed distracted. Chief Science Director Lyris Anbeck remained focused on a growing collection of diagnostic screens surrounding the shield control systems. An assistant approached carrying a data tablet. "Director, all calibration checks are complete. Every shield array is performing above specification." Lyris accepted the report, but did not seem reassured. "Run another harmonic baseline." The assistant hesitated. Again. Several nearby technicians exchanged confused looks before returning to their stations. Minutes later, the demonstration officially began. One civilization after another presented its most advanced kinetic platforms. Massive magnetic launchers, hypervelocity accelerators, exotic alloy penetrators. Every projectile struck the radiant shield with spectacular flashes before disappearing harmlessly into glowing energy. The audience applauded each successful interception. Commentators praised the shield as the greatest defensive breakthrough in galactic history. Rebecca quietly watched another failed attempt. "They are building confidence with every shot." Nathan nodded. "Exactly as planned." "Their plan?" "No." Nathan kept his eyes on the shield. "Ours." Rebecca looked at him, but chose not to ask another question. She knew better by now. Eventually, the announcer's voice echoed across the arena. The Terran Union will now present its submission. Cameras instantly swung toward the human launch platform. Instead of unveiling an enormous experimental weapon, engineers rolled forward a remarkably ordinary rail launcher. It looked almost disappointingly simple. Several delegates laughed openly. Vorak smiled as though the outcome had already been written into history. Is that truly their best effort? One ambassador whispered. Another replied. Perhaps simplicity is all they have left. On the opposite side of the arena, Olivia Hayes completed one final systems check from a secure control station hidden beneath the human platform. Marcus Bennett looked over the diagnostic display. Prototype 1 is stable. Olivia remained silent for several seconds before speaking into the communication link. Nathan, I am here. Remember the sequence. I have not forgotten. She closed her eyes briefly. Neither has the shield. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Every screen across the arena displayed the human launcher. Lyris watched the harmonic monitors instead of the weapon itself. Something about the baseline readings felt different from every previous test, although the numbers remained comfortably within acceptable limits. 7, 6, 5. A young council technician suddenly frowned at one corner of his display. Director? Lyris turned. What is it? There is a tiny resonance fluctuation inside shield segment 12. Lyris leaned closer. The reading was almost too small to measure. Can you identify the source? No, sir. It disappeared. Vorak overheard the exchange and smiled dismissively. Random sensor noise. Continue. Lyris looked back toward the human launcher just as the countdown reached its final seconds. For reasons even he could not explain, he no longer felt like he was watching a weapon being tested. He felt like he was watching a question that the entire galaxy had never thought to ask, and in the silence before the launch, he realized the answer might change everything. The countdown reached 0, and the human rail launcher answered with nothing more dramatic than a deep metallic crack that echoed across the proving grounds. The projectile crossed the arena faster than the eye could follow before disappearing into the radiant shield. The barrier glowed brightly for less than a second, then settled back into its perfect blue surface. The audience waited. Nothing happened. A wave of applause rolled through the observation platforms. Several delegates stood to congratulate one another before the official results had even been announced. Cassian Vorak spread his hands with the confidence of a man whose beliefs had just been validated in front of the entire galaxy. There it is, he declared. Another demonstration that outdated engineering cannot overcome modern science. Rebecca Collins looked toward Nathan Walker. They think it is over. Nathan never looked away from the shield. No, they think they know when it begins. Beneath the human platform, Olivia Hayes ignored every celebration taking place above her. She watched only one graph moving slowly across her largest monitor. Marcus Bennett stepped beside her. No penetration. Energy absorption exactly where they predicted. Olivia pointed to another display hidden beneath the primary diagnostics. Do not watch the impact. Watch what happened afterward. Marcus leaned closer. A series of microscopic harmonic waves continued traveling through the shield architecture long after the projectile itself had disappeared. They are still moving, he whispered. Olivia nodded. Because the projectile was never trying to break the shield. Before Marcus could respond, alarms flashed across the council control network. Lyris Anvek immediately turned toward his engineering staff. Report. A technician looked confused. Segment 12 is showing residual oscillation. Another voice came from across the room. Segment 19 is matching the same pattern. A third station joined in. We are detecting synchronized resonance across multiple shield nodes. Vorak walked into the control center with an impatient expression. What is the delay? Lyris answered without taking his eyes off the monitors. The shield is still vibrating. Vorak frowned. From one kinetic impact? It should not be possible. Vorak folded his arms. Then your instruments are wrong. Lyris quietly replied. 3 independent systems are reporting identical readings. Before anyone could continue, Nathan's calm voice came through the official communication channel. Counselor, has the evaluation concluded? Vorak pressed the reply control. It has. Your weapon failed exactly as expected. Nathan paused for a moment before answering. Then I respectfully request permission for a second shot. Murmurs spread throughout the observation decks. Several delegates laughed again. One reporter even commented that humanity seemed determined to repeat the same mistake twice. Vorak smiled toward the cameras. Permission granted. The council has nothing to fear from repetition. Lyris turned sharply toward him. Counselor, I recommend delaying the next test until we understand these harmonic readings. Vorak dismissed the warning with a casual wave. Dr. Hayes is not the only scientist in this arena. If there were genuine danger, our models would have predicted it. Lyris looked back at the growing resonance map. The oscillations had not weakened. They had become organized. Small, almost invisible waves were now reinforcing one another inside the shield's own structure. He quietly spoke to the nearest engineer. Increase sensor resolution to maximum. The engineer hesitated. That will expose internal architecture to every observer. Do it. Seconds later, the enhanced display revealed something that made the entire engineering team fall silent. The shield was not simply absorbing energy anymore. It was carrying tiny synchronized vibrations through every connected layer, like ripples moving beneath frozen water. Lyris felt his pulse quicken. Counselor, he said firmly, we need to stop this demonstration now. Vorak looked toward the cheering audience filling the arena and slowly shook his head. Stopping now would tell the galaxy that we doubt our own technology. Nathan stood quietly at the human observation platform as the announcement echoed through the stadium. Preparing human submission. Second evaluation authorized. Olivia heard the confirmation through her headset, took one slow breath, and rested her hand on the firing control. Prototype 1 completed its lesson, she said softly. Now it is time for the shield to remember it. The arena grew strangely quiet as the human launcher prepared for its second firing sequence. The confidence that had filled the observation decks only moments earlier had begun to fade, replaced by a kind of restless curiosity that no commentator could explain. Chief Science Director Lyris Anvek watched the harmonic display instead of the launch platform. Every second, the invisible resonance inside the shield became more organized, almost as if the shield itself had memorized the rhythm of the first impact. Beside him, engineers exchanged uneasy glances. The oscillations should have dissipated by now, one technician whispered. Another shook his head. Instead, they are synchronizing. Lyris did not answer. His attention remained fixed on a single graph, climbing so slowly that most observers would have missed it entirely. Across the arena, Cassian Vorak addressed the media with the same calm confidence he had carried all day. This final demonstration will remove any remaining doubt. Science is not built upon hope. It is built upon proof. Nathan Walker heard every word through the public broadcast and quietly folded his hands behind his back. Rebecca Collins glanced toward him. Do you ever get nervous? Nathan smiled without taking his eyes off the shield. Every time. She looked surprised. Really? The difference is that nervous people prepare. Beneath the human platform, Olivia Hayes completed one final diagnostic sweep. Marcus Bennett studied the numbers scrolling across the display. Every parameter is green. Olivia slowly nodded. Because the projectile is exactly where it should be. Marcus frowned. You were still talking about the first one. Yes. She reached for the launch control. The second one only finishes the conversation. The countdown echoed through the arena once again. Cameras zoomed toward the human launcher. Millions of viewers leaned closer to their screens, expecting another harmless impact followed by another round of laughter. The rail launcher fired. The projectile crossed the arena with the same speed, the same mass, and the same trajectory as before. It struck the glowing shield almost exactly where the first round had disappeared. Once again, brilliant blue lights spread across the barrier. Once again, the projectile vanished without passing through. Cheers erupted from parts of the audience. Vorak lifted both hands toward the crowd, ready to declare the experiment complete. Then every celebration stopped. A soft chime echoed across the council control center. One monitor flashed yellow, then another, then 6 more. Engineers stared in confusion as shield diagnostics updated faster than they could read them. Residual harmonics increasing. Segment 24 is out of phase. Automatic stabilizers are compensating. No structural failure detected. Lyris stepped closer to the main display. Expand the internal lattice. The image zoomed inward, revealing billions of microscopic energy pathways carrying synchronized waves through the shield network. None of them had broken. None of them had overloaded. They were simply moving together with perfect precision. Lyris suddenly understood what he was looking at, and the realization drained the color from his face. "It is not attacking the shield," he whispered. "It is teaching the shield to resonate with itself." Before anyone could respond, every shield generator surrounding the proving arena dimmed for less than half a second. The blue glow flickered so briefly that most spectators thought they had imagined it. Then the barriers returned to full brightness, as if nothing had happened. Vorak laughed with visible relief. A harmless fluctuation. Record the human demonstration as another unsuccessful penetration attempt. Lyris slowly turned toward him. "Counselor." His voice was quieter than before. "That was not a recovery." Vorak frowned. "Then what was it?" Lyris kept staring at the shield diagnostics, where hundreds of tiny resonance markers continued spreading deeper into the network long after both projectiles had disappeared. That was the shield adapting. Nathan watched the faint blue glow settle across the arena once again, and for the first time that day, he quietly closed his notebook. Rebecca noticed the movement. "Why now?" Nathan answered with complete certainty. "Because from this point forward, the shield is doing exactly what we wanted, and they still believe they are in control." The celebration never fully returned. The applause faded into uncertain conversations as technicians continued whispering over their consoles. Reporters who had been preparing triumphant headlines quietly changed the wording on their screens, replacing words like decisive and absolute with unexpected and under review. Nathan Walker noticed the shift immediately. Doubt was spreading through the arena faster than any official announcement. Across the control center, Lyris Anvek replayed the diagnostic recordings again and again. Every simulation reached the same impossible conclusion. The shield had not been damaged. It had not been overloaded. It had followed its own design perfectly. That was exactly the problem. "Run the complete energy history," Lyris ordered. An engineer hesitated. "That file is enormous." "Run all of it." Seconds later, thousands of colored lines filled the central display. Every pulse generated by the shield since the first human shot appeared one after another. Lyris stepped closer until his face was only inches from the screen. Suddenly, he pointed toward a repeating pattern hidden beneath the main waveform. "There." The engineering team looked where he pointed. One technician frowned. "Those are background stabilization cycles." Lyris slowly shook his head. "No, they were background stabilization cycles yesterday." He enlarged the image again. Every microscopic resonance left behind by the human projectiles had aligned itself with the shield's own automatic correction system. Instead of resisting the vibrations, the shield had quietly begun amplifying them every time it tried to restore perfect balance. Marcus Bennett watched the same data through the secure human channel and smiled in disbelief. It actually worked. Olivia Hayes folded her arms. "Not because the shield was weak." Marcus nodded. "Because it was too perfect." Olivia looked toward the arena where thousands of spectators still believed nothing important had happened. "Every correction it makes creates the next correction." Marcus whispered. "It trapped itself." Before either of them could say another word, a direct communication request appeared from Lyris Anvek. Olivia accepted it. The alien scientist appeared on the screen, looking more tired than she had ever seen him. "Dr. Hayes," he said quietly, "I need one honest answer." Olivia nodded. "Ask." Lyris took a slow breath. "Did your projectiles carry some kind of hidden energy source?" "No." "A delayed charge?" "No." "Nanotechnology?" Olivia smiled gently. "You are still looking for something we added." Lyris remained silent. Olivia continued. "We did not add anything to your shield. We simply allowed it to meet itself." Lyris stared at her without speaking. For several long seconds, neither scientist moved. Finally, he understood why Nathan Walker had asked that simple question days earlier. Has anyone here ever tested that shield against an enemy who actually wanted to understand how it worked? The answer had never been yes. Back in the observation chamber, Cassian Vorak interrupted every technical discussion with a sharp wave of his hand. "Enough speculation. The shields are operational. The demonstration is complete." Lyris turned toward him. "Counselor, with respect, it is not complete. We need to disconnect every linked shield array before the resonance continues growing." Vorak's expression hardened. "Growing? We just watched 2 projectiles fail." "You watched impacts," Lyris answered. I watched the system learn the wrong lesson. Vorak looked toward the packed arena filled with diplomats and cameras. If we shut everything down now, every civilization will think we are frightened of human engineering. Nathan quietly stepped forward before anyone else could answer. Counselor, he said in an even voice, Earth formally requests one final systems verification before you certify your shield as invulnerable. Vorak laughed. You still believe another inspection will change the outcome? Nathan met his eyes without raising his voice. No, I believe it will reveal the outcome that is already happening. An uneasy silence settled over the arena as engineers exchanged nervous looks. Then, almost unnoticed beneath the floor, another soft harmonic pulse moved through the connected shield network entirely on its own, and this time no human weapon had fired. No one noticed the exact moment the arena became silent. It simply happened. Conversations faded. Reporters lowered their microphones. Even the drones circling above the proving grounds seemed to hover without purpose as every eye turned toward the shield control display. One by one, green status indicators shifted to amber. No alarms screamed. No explosions shook the station. The system was doing exactly what it had been designed to do. It kept correcting itself, and every correction quietly strengthened the resonance hidden inside its own architecture. Lyris Anvek looked across the engineering consoles and spoke with a calm voice that carried more weight than panic ever could. Disconnect every linked array immediately. Technicians rushed to their stations, fingers racing across holographic controls. Isolation command rejected. Backup network is refusing separation. The synchronization cycle is still active. Another engineer swallowed hard before looking up. The shield believes disconnecting itself is a fault that must be corrected. Lyris slowly closed his eyes. Then it has locked itself inside its own definition of perfection. Kashin Vorak stepped toward the main console, disbelief replacing confidence for the first time. Override it. We are trying. Then try harder. Before anyone answered, every shield surrounding the proving grounds dimmed together. The brilliant blue glow faded until it became almost transparent. A heartbeat later, the energy barriers quietly vanished. Not with a violent collapse. Not with sparks or chaos. They simply ceased to exist, leaving open space where absolute protection had stood only moments before. The arena remained perfectly still. No human weapon fired. No fleet advanced. No one took advantage of the moment. The silence itself became the loudest sound anyone had ever heard. Across the observation platform, Rebecca Collins looked toward Nathan Walker. It is over. Nathan gently shook his head. No. What do you mean? He watched engineers working desperately to restart their systems. Now they begin learning. Lyris walked away from the control consoles and crossed the floor until he stood directly in front of Nathan. Every camera in the arena followed him. Ambassador, he said quietly, your people understood this flaw long before today. Nathan nodded once. Yes. Why did you never use it? Rebecca noticed that even Vorak stopped moving, waiting for the answer. Nathan looked around the enormous chamber filled with leaders from every civilization. Because discovering a weakness and exploiting it are not the same choice. Nobody interrupted him. For decades, Nathan continued, Earth studied defensive technology because we wanted stronger shields, not weaker enemies. We found this resonance years ago. We buried the research because if every shield could be defeated this way, then every family, every hospital, every rescue ship, and every peaceful colony in the galaxy would become vulnerable. Lyris lowered his head slightly. You kept the secret to protect people who were not even your allies. Nathan smiled gently. Restraint only matters when you have the ability to do otherwise. Kashin Vorak finally stepped forward. The certainty that had defined him all day was gone. I thought humanity continued using kinetic technology because you had fallen behind. Nathan looked at him without anger. No, Counselor. We continued because simple tools force people to respect complicated consequences. Vorak stood in silence for several long seconds before quietly removing the ceremonial council insignia from his collar and placing it on the nearby console. He did not offer excuses. He did not defend his pride. He simply accepted that arrogance had blinded him more effectively than any shield ever could. Weeks later, the council withdrew its declaration against kinetic technology and established a joint scientific commission led by Lyris Anvek and Olivia Hayes. Their first agreement was surprisingly short. No civilization would ever develop defensive systems without inviting those who questioned them the most. As Nathan prepared to leave the council station, a young diplomatic intern hurried after him. Ambassador Walker, after everything that happened today, what is the greatest strength humanity has? Nathan paused at the doorway and glanced once through the station window toward the distant stars. The ability to know we are capable of more than we should do. He smiled, placed his notebook back into his pocket, and walked away without another word, leaving behind a lesson the galaxy would remember for generations. True power is never measured by what you can destroy. It is measured by what you choose to protect when no one is forcing you to.